So that's what we learned from All-Track Valley. The second battleground that we worked on was Warsong Gulch, and kind of our mindset when we were creating this battleground was like, let's make the opposite of All-Track Valley, a really small battleground, something that hopefully the matches could go quickly. And sometimes they do. Yeah. We began prototyping a lot earlier. With All-Track Valley, we got pretty deep into production before we started playing it. With Warsong Gulch, we were pretty much playing it in an empty field for a while before we were actually getting the map up and running. During prototyping, because we had this small battleground, we knew we wanted it to be a really tight battle. We thought capture the flag would be a really fun mechanic. A lot of us were old school Quake players, and we just, yeah, John Cash is the lead programmer on World of Warcraft. You guys know who he is? id Software, like Quake 2, he was the man. Anyway. Symmetrical bases. It was really important from what we learned from All-Track Valley. As cool as we thought our different bases were, we wanted to have symmetrical bases in Warsong Gulch. And we actually have a level designer on the World of Warcraft team. His name's John Stats. He's an amazing level designer. He had worked on a lot of Quake mods before coming to Blizzard. And he's the guy who designed and built our bases for Warsong Gulch. So he was an old school CTF player and mod maker who was building those bases. And a lot of thought was put into the base design, and that was by John more than anyone. After prototyping, we wanted to fit Warsong Gulch into the game world, and by that I mean we didn't want to just plop a CTF map in the game with no meaning, so we really developed the Silverwing Sentinels and the Warsong Outriders, and we positioned the map on the border of the Barrens and Ashendale where there's a direct Horde Alliance conflict happening. So the next battleground we worked on, and I had mentioned this at the last Blizzcon, was actually called the Gurubashi Catacombs. And this was a pretty crazy map. Our thought at the time was capture the flag was really cool. Let's try a deathmatch map. It was going to be 5 versus 5, single elimination format. Sounds kind of familiar, huh? It was really early on, we put it into prototyping, and here's a picture of the map. It's like horribly ugly because we just placed a lot of geometry down and we didn't really texture it properly. And this was actually our like Gurubashi Catacomb playtest where we tried it out. The map actually has a whole second level to it. It was just massive, and that was one of the lessons that we learned from the playtest. The objectives were absolutely key. We found that in a battleground, you really as a team want to drive towards some objective. The killing of the other player just sort of comes as a natural thing, as obtaining that objective, but it wasn't a satisfying objective on its own. We thought arenas sounded like a cool feature, but battlegrounds would play differently. And Tom and I in our last BlizzCon panel had sort of hinted that we really like this idea of arenas, and that's how the arena system sort of evolved. Arena maps need to be small. That was the other big lesson. And you've seen that in our arena map design, where we try to bring things in as much as possible. So then came Arathi Basin. This was kind of an interesting one because it was kind of getting back to the roots of what our original Battleground philosophy, like Tom told you about, was, which was Warcraft 3 meets Battlefield 1942. So we wanted those iconic Warcraft 3 points of interest, but we also wanted some of that 1942 gameplay of capture point control and team-based. We also wanted to reward the people who weren't necessarily winning, also known as the losers. We wanted lots of players in the battleground, but we wanted to be accessible to everyone. And by accessible, I mean you know what to do right when you show up to the battleground. So you don't have to sort of research, you know, what do the War Masters do? Who are the Sky Commanders? How do I make Ivar spawn? All that kind of stuff. And the whole goal was a very simple design. And this is my map that everybody calls the Atari map. This was the Arathi Basin design map, which is, and we stayed pretty true to it. You can see all the points of interest there. Spread people out, that was the top goal. We found an AV, everybody was clumping up. We were also running into Warsaw Gulch issues of, the 10-on-10 teams just kind of going at it. So Arathi Basin was really designed to spread people out. And then we wanted really clear points of interest. And by that I mean the farm is just called the farm, the blacksmith, the blacksmith. As soon as you say get to lumber mill, people know where you're talking about. So just really clear points of interest. And here's how an early design prototype of Arathi Basin, where the very first thing that we laid out was making sure that from each point of interest you could see at least 2, if not 3 or 4 other points of interest. Just to have those really clear sight lines so you could see people across the map. So that was Arathi Basin. Oh, and don't just reward the wins. Then with Burning Crusade, we decided to make Eye of the Storm. Our original concept for the battleground that was going to ship with our Outland expansion was to do a Hellfire Peninsula battleground. But at the time, we were working on a new zone called Netherstorm. We thought it was really cool, and we thought a lot of our ideas fit better in the Netherstorm environment than in the Hellfire environment. So we wanted an Outland-themed battleground, obviously. We wanted to put a spin on tried and true gameplay. We felt like Arathi Basin was working out really well, but we wanted to try a little bit something new on top of Arathi Basin. And so our original concept was that we would have 4 bases, just like we do in Eye of the Storm, and the 5th base would actually be on a floating piece of rock that would continually move in a circular fashion across the battleground, and eventually that circular rock would come in contact with all the other points of interest. So it would become this kind of moving, rotating gameplay. We worked on that for a little while, and we found that it really wasn't working out or playing like we thought it would. So instead we went to the flag in the middle concept. So we just kind of adapted our philosophy on that one. So the future of Battlegrounds, I'm going to hand you off back to Tom, and he's going to go into some of the things that I brought up earlier, talk about some of the solutions to those problems.